Morrison government today has intervened to keep two of Australia's three remaining oil refineries open in a $2 billion bid to shore up the nation's fuel security. For more on this, I'm joined from Sydney by broadcasting legend, my good friend, host of Alan Jones. All of that and some. Right now, Alan Jones from Sydney. Alan, you have
Hello, lovely to see your smiling face.
Hello, handsome. How are you?
Very well.
You have talked about this for such a long time. I know Jim Molan was an early advocate as well. This is, it's a steep price tag, of course, but it's a move in the right direction, surely.
Well, it is. I think the government is lucky on some of these things in that the public don't fully understand the issues. The first point I'd make is that 60% of all our fuel consumption, liquid fuel consumption, 60% of it is imported and comes here for use straight away. So that means it's got to navigate the South China Seas, it's got to navigate Torres Strait and so on. So fixing up the refineries is not going to guarantee supply. The second point is that the other 40% is actually refined here, but the bulk of it still has to be imported. So when he guarantees that the refineries will stay open and will increase the capacity of the refineries and so on, we are still requiring imported either refined fuel, which is 60% of it, which comes in and we can use it straight away, or 40%, which is refined here, but dependent again on imported fuel. And that is the nub of it. It's one thing to have the refineries functional, and good on him for doing that, and that's an excellent initiative. But the real issue is here whether we can guarantee safe navigation through those waters, the South China Sea and the Torres Strait. And with now the industrial city in Daru, which likely poses a significant threat to our passages through the Torres Strait, and then, of course, which we all know, the occupation of China in the South China Seas puts that at risk. That's why, Dennis Shanahan, and your point that you just made is perfectly valid. We've got to strike a balance here. We've got to keep the dialogue open with China. We've got to make sure that their interests are certainly represented, but so are ours. So the sum up here is that we are still requiring imported, whether it's refined or crude, to come via our ships, via our oceans and via our ports. And it's that aspect alone that will guarantee whether we'll have appropriate supply. He did make the other point, Peter, that he said that means that Australians would be guaranteed fuel supply for 24 days. We've got an international obligation that we are supposed to be able to guarantee fuel supplies for 90 days. For 90 days, not 24.
We absolutely do. We absolutely do. Yeah, you're spot on. This is one of the issues, isn't it? Not just refining capacity, but something to refine that's critically important. I'm sure you've had as many conversations as I have over the last few days about the budget last week and whether it fits into a sort of a liberal framework, whether some think it was, too Labor in terms of its spending, its debt and deficits. Bit of fallout in relation to the budget. Peta Credlin has rung the alarm bells on debt, warning that the Morrison government and warning them against spending too much on COVID stimulus measures. He addressed the Liberal Party in Melbourne on Friday. Australia's longest-serving Treasurer also said legislated increases to super contributions won't result in higher wages. Of course, we know that, but it doesn't look like the Parliament is of a mind to unwind those. Do you think Josh Frydenberg needs to listen more carefully to Peta Credlin, his mentor here? And if he does, will he?
Yes, well, goodness me. How much time have we got? Josh tried to justify all of this, as I said last week, by arguing they'd stuck to the Menzian tradition. This has turned traditional and orthodox Liberals on their head. And the argument being that, of course, to fight coronavirus, this is the kind of expenditure we had to undertake. I have never accepted that that's true, and I think that's what Peta Credlin was saying. The other thing is, of course, Treasury are no guide and no help to Josh Frydenberg. I'd hate to be the Treasurer with these kind of Treasury forecasts. They and the health forecasts were wrong. 150,000 people were going to die. That was wrong. They said, OK, the economy will sort of move along a bit because iron ore prices will stay around $55. Now they're $230. So that's a $160 mistake. Then we've had this business about unemployment and what will it be? 7.5, 15. Now they're saying it's 5.6. So what set of figures does Josh go by? That's one of his problems. But the argument that we had to spend all this dough and the economy is $56 billion better off today than it was when the forecasts were made in December. But Josh and Scott Morrison have spent all that money. Now, what Costello is saying is you just can't go on like this. There has to be a day of reckoning. Now, this was very much, as you know and you've said, an election budget. They weren't prepared to upset anybody. There's no sense of any kind of reform at all. And at the end of the day, someone else is going to have to pay down the line. They tried to head the Labor Party here off at the pass by taking aboard all those things that Labor might have done, whether it's aged care, whether it's national disability and so on. And there's no room for Labor to move, even if they were regarded as a viable alternative government, and they aren't. They'd have a long way to go. So I think we could have done, Morrison and Frydenberg could have done a lot less spending and still been able to deal with Albanese.
I think you're absolutely right. Hey, just a quick one. You're an Oxford man, Mr. Jones. What do you make of this madness? Oxford University over the weekend is going to wage war, it says, on imperial measurements. This is a story in the Telegraph. The university's maths, physics and life science departments all want to decolonise the imperial measurements system. They said it's too deeply tied to the idea of empire. I tell you, given an inch for some people, they'll take a mile, or they probably can't even use those measurements anymore. This is crazy stuff.
Well, it's very disappointing. The old alma mater, Oxford University, it was never like this. And now they're caving in to all these woke theories. I would just make one point. If, therefore, we have to dismantle the imperial weights and measures scheme simply because it has an imperial, a sense of empire about it, and Cecil Rhodes and all those people dealt with slaves, and if we're going to then judge today on yesterday's standards, away you go. But then Oxford, as I have written to them, need to answer me one question. Why then is the Wickham Chair of Physics named after Tencent, the computer company, primarily owned by China? And they don't seem to worry about taking money from China to fund the Chair of Physics at Wickham College. And at the end of the day, we all know what China's record is in relation to freedoms, whether they be religious, personal, the Uyghurs, the whole scene of China. So I guess the end product will be, we'll eventually have a Xi scholarship at Oxford University to convert the university into one great big woke institution. It's very, very disturbing that allegedly smart intellectual people would cave into this nonsense and be unable to defend what they've stood for years and years.
Not much gets past you, and I am not surprised that there is a missive on its way to London right now from you to Oxford telling them to pull their head in.
Absolutely.
Alan Jones, thank you as always.
Thanks,
We'll
Peter.
watch you at 8 o'clock.